Well, I am Dave Fogel. I'm with Advanced Trading in Bloomington. When they asked me to speak on the same agenda with Max and Steve, I thought they called the wrong number, but they didn't. So I've known Max and Steve a long time, and I'm honored to speak with these guys. They're good guys. So thanks for listening, and thanks for coming out here. I've been doing this since 1982. I started doing this. I've been with Advanced Trading since 1984. So one of the things that's come up a lot this spring is people are trying so hard to box this year into another year. You can't. We've never had 30 million acres of corn and beans now planted on, June 15th or so? Just never happened. So it's a different year. It's a whole set of rules and stuff. You just gotta forget what's happened before. But when it comes to the marketing part of it, it's no harder than any other year. It's just more volatile. So we'll talk about that a little bit. I'll try and get out of the way of this thing. All right. This one?
Should be, yep.
I just got a new iPhone yesterday. I can barely get that to work yet. So
Is it not working?
it is not working. No worries. One of the one of the things we do in our office a lot, we talk about bids and offers and price, and trying to figure out, do I buy it here, sell it there. Well, the interesting thing about this year, the bid and offer on reality and myth, so to speak, is pretty wide. I've got people, I did a meeting in Pennsylvania, Ohio, right on the border a few weeks ago, and they didn't know where I was from, and I had a guy tell me how bad it was in McLean County, Illinois. And I live in McLean County, Illinois, and he told me nobody got planted. Well, that's not true, they got planted. They got planted really late. I was telling Max before the meeting, we look really good. You guys are in similar shape that we are. We look really good, but it looks like June 15th, right? So the spread that we're dealing with, you got her?
I think I got you.
There's just all sorts of, I'll get rid of that stuff for now. There's just all sorts of talk out there, and every farmer wants the market to go up. I understand that. If you're a row crop guy, you want the market to go up. Makes our jobs a lot easier too, to be honest with you. But I just think there's so much hype, and there's so much talk, and there's so much just kind of spinning things a little bit, that my job and Fred and Brett and Mike back there, we're just trying to bring it back home for everybody. So let's talk about that. What a spring I've ever seen. What a spring you've ever seen. Historically, if we can raise a good crop in Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota, we get by pretty good. We've had plenty of years where Indiana suffered, Ohio suffered, other places. But if those four states are good, markets don't go up very often. They're pretty happy with those four states. That didn't happen this year. Big problems in western Minnesota early. Illinois, you guys know all about Illinois, probably the worst of the four states. Iowa, mostly good. A few spots you got to worry about. Nebraska, mostly good today, but boy, a lot of problems before planting, as you guys know. So we had the wet spring, and then we had a whole bunch of trying to figure out how many acres got planted, not planted, how late. Are we going to make black layer? Are we going to get to the final crop size? So honestly, today, the hardest part of our job, corn rallied about $1.10. I got a slide coming up about this. And beans rallied about $1.40. And the calls that we're getting are, why aren't the markets going up? Don't they know how wet the spring was? Well, they do. That's why you want $1.10 to $1.40. So really, to go up any more or not go up anymore, it's totally based on the crop in the ground today. I know nobody in this room, and I'm not saying I'm any different, nobody in this room believes the USDA number, right? They're the worst guys ever, right? Maybe not though. They've had plenty of years they did it right and got it right and found out they were not so far off. But the market today believes their numbers. And it'll change a lot if down the road they do another survey here in July and we get different numbers. But for now, they believe the numbers. So what you're down to today is the crop in the ground. So if you guys want another $1.10 out of corn and a $1.40 out of beans, I don't think it's going to come from all the wet acres we had months ago. It'll come from that crop. And then the frost thing can't go away. Our first frost day typically where I live in McLean County, Illinois is October 5th. And there's just no way we're going to get to October 5th, so it better be a little later than usual, right? Those are the things that will drive price, but I get so many phone calls asking me why the markets aren't higher based on something that already happened. It's old news. Markets got to be fed, and it'll get fed too. Quick story. It was sometime in, May. I had a guy call me up who I've known for 25 years, farmer, good guy, good farmer. And it was it was unusual to call me on a Sunday night, 9 o'clock, but we talked for about an hour. And the essence of the call was, he was going out of business. He didn't think he could survive the year. He just didn't have the profits he needed. Prices were really bad, as you guys know, in the spring and all that stuff. And so we talked for an hour about how to just survive and maybe get out of the business. And that guy today, I mean, life's changed. He was lucky enough to have all his corn and beans from the 18 crop unsold. Hadn't done much on 19. He had done some marketing, but via options, of course. And today he's in business and thinks he'll be in business. So when you look at what happened with the flooding, definitely a have and have not situation. Those that were not able to plant, you know what that looks like. But for those who were able to plant and maybe have a good looking crop, it is life changing. $150 an acre difference on corn. And so I don't get a lot of calls like this. It's pretty unusual, but it's kind of the fun side of the flooding part, if there's a fun side at all. It's nice to have something successful come out of it, because there's a lot of pain involved, as you guys know. So what happened this spring, you guys know as well as I do, but I want to kind of go through it just a little bit, because I think it'll help you make decisions better going forward. First of all, we came into this 5-year window really flat. You know, we like, in our office, we like when the markets move. We like it going up, we like it going down, we like it wild. It can't move fast enough for us, because the more it moves, the more we can help you guys. Well, the last 5 years has not moved much, right? It's been pretty uneventful. That actually mattered coming into the spring with the flooding, because you get out of practice sometimes when it comes to marketing and pricing and being aggressive or whatever, and you start thinking what's happened is always what's going to happen. So the last 4 or 5 years, not much upside movement, not much downside movement either. So why would this year be any different? And what happens, it was way different. And I think people were unprepared to handle it in the most part, and that's why a lot of grain got sold really cheap compared to where it got to. So now you got these specs. You guys, the word specs and funds, I think over the years the farmer community doesn't like the word funds. I love the funds. You guys should love the funds if you grow crops for a living, because funds make the market move. And what the funds have done historically, they take it lower than it should go, and they take it higher than it should go. And that means you can do things you need to do for your business. Do I think the funds make a bunch of money like you all think they do? I don't. I think the money they make is on commissions, not on trading. And you can go find funds. You can go get a futures magazine and find some good ones. Good luck finding a good one for 5 years in a row, or 5 years out of 10 even. But the funds had an interesting spring. There's two kinds of funds. There's people that look at the news and the information, the fundamentals, and there's people that could care less what a corn stalk looks like. They just trade off of computers, and they're fast and they're furious, and it's a whole different deal, but the volume is tremendous. So on corn, as we came into the flooding, prior to the flooding, we had a record short corn position. And it was hurting, right? Because they were really stepping on the market, and you guys were hurting price-wise. Pretty big bean position. What got interesting with the funds is that things were happening to make them feel good. We came into the March grain stocks report, the last trading day in March. You guys remember that one? We were thinking a 1.6, 1.7 billion bushel corn carryout. They found a bunch of corn because demand's not very good. We all want to talk about how great the flooding is. No one wants to talk about demand. We got a demand problem. So demand's not very good. Markets went down a lot more after this report came out. We really hit this thing hard. It was ugly. We were in trouble. Now you got a 2.1, 2.2 billion carryout. Well, what got interesting was it rained. And it rained and it rained. I've never seen rain come down like this. I like to golf on weekends. It really messed up my game, you guys. So it wasn't just the farmer that suffered. Me too, right? So it just rained. It just rained a bunch. And it was just crazy how much it rained. So these are some of the numbers you guys are probably familiar with. But if you want to know who suffered the most, this is it. Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, South Dakota, Michigan, Illinois. And Illinois is the big one in that group. I was in South Dakota 2-3 weeks ago doing some meetings. There's very little planted. Now, does the market care about South Dakota like Illinois? No. But when you get Illinois in trouble, the other stuff starts to matter. So it's been interesting, no question about it. Now the funds have a problem. They can't get out. We talked in our office a lot about this, how as this market started taking off with the rain, who are they going to get out with? The farmer's not going to sell. Who are they going to get out with? The commercial grain guys aren't going to move it. So they had a big problem. So this record short corn position and a pretty large bean position, ended up very, very unprofitable. They lost a bunch of money on their position. They're getting back in the game now the other way, but they took a beating, and no one really knows about it because it doesn't matter. Then the acre report comes out the end of June, the last trading day in June, and the speed between the report coming out and everybody on Twitter telling everybody how stupid USDA was instant. It was, I mean, every single tweet was USDA jokes, laughing, making fun of them. But here's the problem with making fun of USDA. They get the last word. When they say acres are 91.7, I had trouble with it too. Our whole office had trouble with it. It doesn't feel like it. We work with companies from west to east. Grain companies, farmers, everybody. So you get an opinion, you get a feel. So it didn't feel right. And corn's kind of struggled ever since. It's come back a little bit, but it's definitely hurt. So here's the thing about USDA, and I've said this before, even before this, this year. If you guys go back I told you I started in 1982. Let's go back to 1982. In 1983, we had a big drought, affected the whole Corn Belt. In 1988, we had another big drought, affected the whole Corn Belt. Then we go all the way to 2012, right? We've had little droughts in between, but those were the three that really moved the market. Then you had you had other years markets go up, 95, 96. You had the flood in 93. 2012 or 2008 through 12. Those are crazy years. But in my 35 years, we've had 3 years where we had a big drought. So what are the odds that USDA is not going to give you a good production number typically? This is acres, I realize, but when you come into that first August report every year, I think this year it's August 11th, we, in 2008, 9, 10, 12, we got to $8 corn, $16 beans, right? And it has messed everything up ever since, because now we look at $4.50 corn, $5 corn, whatever price, and we don't like it. There used to be a day where X amount of bushels got sold by harvest time. And that number is nowhere near what it used to be. We do not forward price grain anymore, hardly ever. And it all happened starting in 2008. So you got 2008 plus years where you didn't sell early, or you did sell early and you got burnt. Now we don't do it anymore. So you walk into August 11th every year, or whatever date it is, and you're not very heavily sold. And so 3 years out of 35, you've had a drought. The odds are really high. USDA is going to give you a number that's pretty good, because you're all pretty good at what you do. We are really good at growing crops. Too good at it. We're great at it. We're getting better at it. So this idea where USDA is the bad guy, you can not like them, you can not agree with them, you can whatever, but the reality of it is the market listens to them until something else comes along and says it's not right, which will be more USDA. So right now the market could care less about acres. I'm not even talking about it. It cares about the crop in the ground. So I got people every day calling us up saying, don't they know, how bad things are? They do, and we traded it, and now it's new stuff. So you can bash them all you want, but the market does listen to them. It's the only game in town. We do a lot of private stuff in this business, the Pro Farmer Tour and all these different tours that I think are very well-meaning, but the market doesn't really care. I haven't seen the market really move based off a private report in a long time, whether it's Informa, anybody. It's USDA. That's the one that shakes it up for you guys. So I don't think there's any money into telling everybody how bad USDA is. I think the money is making sure you've done what you need to do before USDA does what they do. Because your odds of being right by not selling grain before reports, they're not great. Unless you guys think you can't grow a crop every year, and that's what's going on. So the number one question we've had, since the market broke, and it broke hard, don't they know how bad things are? They do. Everyone's really aware how bad things are. It's not a secret. And it is bad. It was not great. And where I live in McLean County, I would say 85% of that crop got planted from June 5 to June 10. Really unusual. And boy, did it get planted fast. But June 5 through June 10 is not great, right? So there's so much misinformation, there's so much spinning. I got on Twitter, I don't know how many years ago, and I like it a lot less than I used to. I don't read it very often anymore. We do a few things with it. But when I first got on Twitter, I liked it because I got to learn about different things in different parts of the country. And I started figuring out what people I could really count on to, tell the story right. And then it kind of turns into a world thing where I know this guy in Brazil really seems to tell the truth a lot. But Twitter has just turned into just kind of a spin thing. So if you raise corn for a living and you want corn to go higher, keep showing that same picture of that flooded field. That same joke with the handout, remember that, you guys all seen that picture? That's all we do with Twitter anymore. We just kind of make what we need to have happen the story. But the market's pretty smart. The market knows, who's crying wolf every year and who's not. And so I don't think Twitter's going to rally the market. I really don't. All right. Nobody wants to talk about demand if you raise crops for a living because it's not a good story. Demand is horrible. It's really bad. And one of the things that happens when you don't raise crops in certain parts of the country, we work with an elevator in Northwest Ohio. And one of the farmers on that board is a customer of ours. And he told us at a board meeting, they analyzed their situation and they think they got 1,000 acres planted in their backyard this year. Can you imagine that? Jewel Grain, Ohio, don't use that. But Jewel Grain's got 1,000 acres. So what's gonna happen is people are gonna find a way to bring corn in. It's already happening. Barges are coming up from South America. So you don't need to raise every single bushel as long as you can buy the bushels. And there's going to be a bunch of rationing things that happen if this thing has more legs to it. If this market takes off further, people will find a way to use something else besides corn or beans. It's always that way. But don't think the market's just sitting back hoping the crop is just great and it's bigger than we think it is. They're not going to wait. And I'll get into basis here in a second, but there's a bunch of things happening in basis that have never happened before. It's really interesting. All right, and then I didn't mention South America. So South America, 2 years ago, South America really helped us a lot. They had big problems, Argentina in particular. And then this past year, they had record crops for the most part. So that supply is helping to make up for our shortfall. Just like last year, our supply helped make up for their shortfall. We still have a carryout. We still have a lot of extra beans, down to about 700, 800 million bushels. Corn's going to be somewhere over 2 billion. We're not running out of corn and beans, at least not today. All right. So you got the wet areas, and then you got the areas that got planted. So what's already happening, and it's happened for several months now, is the places that know they don't have a crop, they're working really hard to buy the crop now. And there is still crop to buy. A lot of farmers sold a lot of crop way too early, but there's still a lot to buy. Not a lot, there's still enough to buy. And so what's happening now is everybody is acting in these areas without crops planted as though the crop in the bin is my new crop. I've got to get those bushels now or I'm not going to get corn in the fall. There's no corn to get. And that's got tremendous impact on the basis. So we had a $1.10 rally in corn. That bought a bunch of corn, way before a $1.10 rally. $1.40 in beans, bought a bunch of beans. So in order to get the rest of that crop out of the bin, it's probably going to take basis. And it already is. It's already happening. There's people in Ohio that are looking at 75 cents over for old crop corn. They've never seen that. 15, 20 over is a good number for those guys. 75 over, they're going to find a way to get that stuff. And areas are going to fight. So if you're in an area that's got a crop and you're by one that doesn't, they're going to fight. And that'll be good for the farmer that's got bushels. So it's all about the crops in the ground. So what we're doing right now with our guys is there could be more upside. We could have a problem with the crop in the ground. They could totally change the acres in July or whenever they report that thing. It could totally happen. So you've got to find a way not to give it away. And the way we like to do it is we like to wait for basis to get really strong. And until then, put floor prices underneath it. We're option guys. We've always been option guys. But we're option guys. There are 3 pieces to marketing. You got to figure out this piece, the flat price. Nobody can predict it. Trust me, nobody can predict it. More mistakes made this year than I've ever seen by people. So many mistakes. So you got to figure out this piece. You have to understand basis. The piece that's probably the least understood is the one we're the most familiar with. And you have to understand spreads. Spreads matter a lot. And I'll talk about 20 crops in a second in terms of how that matters. So we actually had markets. You guys saw how much the corn market and the bean market broke. All markets need news to keep going. So we had the African swine fever thing going on. About 3 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, the hog market actually got down below where it was when the whole thing started with the swine fever. Swine fever didn't go away. It's as bad as ever, but the market just got tired of the news. Now we've kind of gone up a little bit on some different stuff. Same thing can happen in corn and beans, and it is a little bit. It's not unusual. So here's the numbers, just so you guys know these numbers. But we went up to 473 on December corn futures, and then back to 363 by, whatever. That's a 52-cent break. And people were mad that it broke, and you're mad at USDA, but it's not their fault, it's not the market's fault, it's our fault if we didn't defend it. You've got to defend price. Soybeans, similar, dropped also 58 cents. It may come back, it may not come back. If I was you and I had corn to sell, and I had beans to sell, I would assume it's not coming back, but I would make darn sure if it does, I'm there for it. And there's ways to do that, and you guys know that. Crop insurance, this was the fun part of the rally, I thought. So crop insurance started at $4. We got to $4.73. So here's crop insurance. And I love crop insurance. I did this in 83 and 88 without crop insurance. It is not fun. We don't sell crop insurance. We're not going to sell it. But I love crop insurance. It kept people in business in 2012. So you got this Feb average, right? Then the market did this. 73 more cents it went above the Feb average. And then it's come back a little bit. Anytime you can beat that first Feb average, let's do it. Let's just get something done. Let's sell something, let's buy puts, whatever. But the market gave you a chance to beat that average. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on crop insurance. There's a guy back there in the red shirt who is by far the expert in this country on crop insurance. But crop insurance is a great thing. There's so much you can do with it. Basis. Let's get into basis a little bit. Basis is going to be the most interesting part of what happens in the next few months, because if the flat price is out of steam, I don't know. It may be, it may not be. We'll never know until it's over. But it doesn't change the fact it's hard to buy grain right now. So we still have to buy a lot of corn. There's still a lot of corn to buy, and it's gotten really hard to buy it because the price, broke 50 some cents, came back a little bit. So as a country, we're kind of running out of corn. It's hard to buy it. So it's either going to be one of two things. Either the market's going to rally and that corn's going to move easily, or the market is not going to rally. And if it doesn't rally, you're going to see basis levels that are crazy in the areas that don't, have the corn. And if you're in an area with corn and not a crop in the ground, it's going to be maybe historic. I don't know. It'll be different. But it's hard for us to buy corn right now in this business. So that's probably good for you guys overall. So, will the farmer sell the remaining bushels? I don't think so. I think once you make a high of 473 and then drop it 50 cents and bring it back a little bit, now there's a mark. And you want to know why marketing's so hard for everybody? Marketing is hard because, and there may be tons of exceptions in this room, but I just had this happen last week. I had 40 people, and all 40 had some bushels to sell. And all 40, when I asked them if they had any idea what price they were going to sell it at, they all laughed. They had no idea what they were going to sell the grain at. So think about marketing. I got this crop in the bin. I got this market moving around pretty good. I want to sell it. I don't know where I'm going to sell it at. So what makes you sell a bushel if you have no plan and no target? Your checkbook or emotions, right? That's why marketing is so hard. Nobody knows what they're going to do. They want the market to go up. They want to tell everybody how bad the crops are, but it might not go up. You don't know. So don't spend any time trying to figure out what the final crop size will be, because there's no money in it. There's nothing to gain out of it. You guys can drive around the entire country. I read an article this morning, I forget the brokerage company, but they did all this high-tech surveillance, and they've got 150, 70,000 acres, I can't remember, and they did all the satellite stuff, and they're using that to kind of come up with what the crop size is. It won't happen. One of the guys in our office, Joe Haroon, who trades ethanol for us, used to work at a big, big grain company. And his job, with many other people and tons of money and tons of technology, was to predict the crop size. So he's been with us probably 15 years now. And I asked him, I go, how'd you guys do doing that? He goes, we were never right. It's hard. So don't spend any time trying to figure out the final crop size. Put all your time into learning what you need to do on your bushels. That's all that matters. If it goes up, we'll do lots of great things. But if it goes down, don't get hurt further. It doesn't have to be that way. So, and then this is the other thing, don't spin the story. When people call me up and start telling me how bad it is somewhere, my response is, what are we going to do about it? Corn rallied to $1.10, what do you want to do? How can we get something out of this bad news? And that's where the money is. That's where the fun is. But if you guys think you're gonna figure out the final crop size, won't happen. And it could change dramatically. We could find out by Jan of next year, that final number, that we really did lose a lot of acres. I remember, I'm not 100% sure, in '93, the market had a hard time trying to figure out how many acres got lost. Markets do well with heat and drought. They don't do so well with wet. I don't know why. And if I remember right, it wasn't until that final Jan crop report that the market got shocked. It wasn't just the acres on the river that got hurt. It was more than that. Too much rain. And the market never got its arms around it. This may be similar, but you can't compare it. It just can't be compared because it's so different. The late planting is the biggest variable in all that. So, where are we at here? The other thing that I'll give you a little warning on is I had a phone call from somebody in Ohio not too long ago, and he wanted to know what we could do to help him recoup $35,000 that he lost doing one of these grain contracts that elevators run, and he had no bushels to plant, 0. So in a sense, he sold his crop, but didn't raise a crop, right? So one of the things that, in my experience, and this is touchy stuff for a lot of people, but I'm not in the camp that thinks that's a great idea to give somebody who wants to buy your bushels and buy those bushels at a low basis if possible. Just, here's my bushels. You guys take over for me. I don't get it. I don't understand it. You know, the thing that I like to do and the thing that our group likes to do, we like to teach. And another reason why marketing is so difficult is you walk into a room and a guy is just talking big words and abbreviations and, you know, it's fast, it's furious. If you guys can farm for a living, I've been in your tractors, I've been in your combines. If you guys can farm, you can do this. Because farming is hard. It's really hard, and it's very technical, and it's very unusual, but you just gotta find a way to understand the words so they're not so bad or not so scary, and that's what happens. But, you know, there's contracts out there and there's hundreds and hundreds of contracts, and they tend to do okay when the market does this, because anybody does better than the U.S. farmer if you sell something, because you guys don't sell much ahead anymore, and that's a general statement, not all of you do that. But when the markets do this, you know, we got people that are $1 out of the market, and some didn't raise a crop. That's not good. So back to Twitter, right? So I saw somebody on Twitter who was aggressively defending selling corn 75 cents below the market. And their attitude was, I will not apologize for selling corn 75 cents below the market. It was a good strategy. And I don't engage on Twitter too often, but I wanted to write back, no, that's the very definition of a bad strategy. You missed it by 75 cents. So you can't justify that. Now, I get why it happens. 5 years of nothing, right? What's my risk? One big year like this is what it takes to survive in farming, in my opinion. One really big year. And we seem to get one every 10 years, but you can't mess it up. If you mess it up, then you deal with those years that aren't so much fun. It's even tougher in livestock. But when we have one of those big years like this year, it's go time. We've got to get it. We can't mess it up. And I'm talking 2 crops, if not 3. You got to get 18 right, you got to get 19 right, and you got to figure out 20. 20 is part of this whole thing. No one wants to talk about 20, but 20 is part of it. So, someone else markets your bushels, you don't learn anything, and you got a buck less in the market. I don't think that works. I think it's time to learn it yourself. And you can learn it, I promise you. So these 20 corn, one of the things that really was interesting, you guys know when markets take off like this one did, it's always nearby first, right? That's a sign of a bull market. First strong basis, high futures. And so 20 corn hardly moved. In fact, it moved, I think, 35 cents from high to low, or low to high, I'm sorry. So you had this $1.10 rally and only 35 cents for next year. So you guys, if you got 18 crop, great. If you got 19 crop, great. What do you think is going to happen next year in 20 if prices stay around here? Do you think the South American farmer is going to raise more corn next year? Do you think the U.S. farmer is going to plant more corn next year? Does that mean 20 crop can't go down? It can. It didn't go up during a $1.10 old crop rally very much. Beans were the same way. Beans really didn't move that much. It moved, but nowhere near the old crop numbers, which is typical for a bull market. But I think everyone's forgetting there's a crop behind it. So get your arms around 18 if you have it. Definitely get your arms around 19 if you grew it. But don't forget 20, because 20 is the one that could really be the most painful. because it's gonna have all the after effects. We may have a bad year next year, but historically, what are the odds of having another crazy planting year like this? And what are the odds of a drought? I don't know. I mean, it can happen, right? But if I had to make a bet on 20 production, I'll bet it's good. And that's the way you should look at it. And if it's not, crop insurance. I had people in 2012 that had record income on crop insurance. I don't think your risk is drought. I don't think your risk is flood. I think your risk is you mess up the price. So this is kind of my wrap up. I don't know how much time I took, Joe. I'm okay. Good. I'm good. You cannot predict price. There is nobody in this country that figured out it's going to rain like crazy. And there is nobody that can figure out today what the real acres are that aren't planted. And there's nobody that can figure out how many of those acres are going to make it to the finish line. It's been an extreme year, so can it frost early? Sure, why not? What else is left, right? You know, let it frost. So there aren't any price experts. You know, we're not price experts. All we are, we're really good at trying to figure out how to get this to be in your favor. We're really good at basis. We're really good at spreads. That's what we do. And we're really, really good at getting you to do it. That's the gift I think we have. And we care about it. So there are no price, you know, there's no price experts. And you cannot be in this business and not want prices to go higher if you grow it for a living. I get that. I totally get it. Anybody would be crazy not to want prices to go higher. You can root for higher prices, but don't get upset when it goes down. Just defend it. Stop it. Stop letting USDA be a four-letter word. They're not. They are what they are. You know, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. It doesn't matter if they're wrong because the market's going to listen to them. And if they are wrong, it'll get fixed later, I think. Maybe they're not wrong. A couple of years ago, no one thought we had the crop size we did, and we did. They were right. Don't be the victim. We went from 5 years of just brutal markets, hard to make a living, really hard to make a living. And this is, if you didn't plant, it is what it is. You're going to get your, preventive plan. You're going to get X amount of dollars. You're done. But if you did plant, this is opportunity. This is really good. And you're going to have to learn, if you haven't done it to date, I think you're going to have to learn how options work if you're a late planting guy, because I would not be comfortable making cash sales on a crop that got planted June 10th. You can't do it. It's just too scary. You might not make it. And what do you think basis will do if you frost in an area? It's going to go nuts. So I think that's all I got. I do. That's all I got. I thank you so much for listening and coming, and I thank Joe and his group at Rooster for having me here.